With the Russian investigation expanding under the special counsel Mueller, um, and with James Comey set to do his spectacular testimony on Thursday, you've got all the different mainstream publications just preparing for it like it's a blockbuster movie or something that's going to be coming out. Um, you've got certain outlets actually having an actual counter counting down the days before James Comey actually testifies. James Comey himself, of course, is quite the drama queen. He loves to get in front of the cameras and sort of be at the center of the stage. So you add that to the fact that he is probably not too happy about the fact that he got fired by President Trump, especially in the way that he got fired. Reportedly, he was giving a speech and actually saw in the background on news feeds and TVs in the background that he was fired, and that was actually how he supposedly found out, and was shortly after that taken aside and formally told that he was let go. So there's probably a bit of resentment there. Of course, you've got the famous Comey memo that has been floating around out there, still unconfirmed. Basically, no one knows if it's true, if it's half true, if it's real at all. And you've got this whole spectacle. Of course, the Russian investigation has been something the Democrats and the mainstream media has been pushing now for some time, and they continue to say that there is evidence of collusion, or there's going to be evidence of collusion. Of course, everybody who's actually looked at any of the relevant information or evidence, people like the head of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, and even Democrats who've looked at the very same information, the transcripts of the different phone calls and other sources of information like that, have all said that there's nothing there. There's no evidence of collusion. Of course, the Democrats are saying, oh, well, something's going to come up at some point. Well, this investigation has been going on since July of last year. You would think they would have found something by now if something was to be found. But a new revelation has come about, and there is actually a leaker that got busted. And I will get to that in a little bit. But the thing I want to point out about that is that the media is treating it, or going to treat it at least, like it is a big breakthrough. It's a big revelation and a big bombshell. It's really not. It really doesn't tell us anything that we didn't already know. It does provide some more potential detail, alleged details. Of course, it's still nothing but allegations, as always. But it is more detailed information than we've had in the past. And I'll get to the story of the person who leaked it and everything like that here in a little bit, because that is actually pretty incredible, to say the least. A pretty insane story all around. In a world full of insane stories nowadays, the news cycle is basically impossible to keep up with nowadays. It is absolutely crazy. But before I get to that, I want to go through why the leak is not exactly a bombshell. So this was from January 6th this year. And this was from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Background to, quote, assessing Russian activities and intentions in recent U.S. elections, the analytic process, and cyber incident attribution. What this is it was a report by the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and it was an assessment into the Russian attempts to influence the 2016 campaign. And there were some key takeaways from it to the keen observer. So let me just read from this a bit. Russian efforts to influence the 2016 US presidential election represent the most recent expression of Moscow's long-standing desire to undermine the US-led liberal democratic order. So some interesting language there, the US-led liberal democratic order. But these activities demonstrated a significant escalation in directness, level of activity, and scope of effort compared to previous operations. We assess Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the US presidential election. Russia's goals were to undermine public faith in the US democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. We further assess Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. We have a high confidence in these judgments. Moscow's influence campaign followed a Russian messaging strategy that blends covert intelligence operations, such as cyber activity, with overt efforts by Russian government agencies, state-funded media, third-party intermediaries, and paid social media users, or quote-unquote trolls. And yet you've had Hillary Clinton come out just recently, and I mean, she blames literally everybody except her for the fact that she lost the election, and she's come out now and said that there was an army of 1,000 Russian trolls that pushed fake news and, you know, helped Donald Trump to win the election. Just completely absurd. But you have some similar language here in this assessment from January 6th this year. And here is the key takeaway from it, right here. And this is why the leak is not necessarily the giant bombshell that a lot of people are going to say that it is. Russian intelligence obtained and maintained access to multiple elements of multiple U.S. state or local electoral boards. So they maintained access. They maintained access to multiple U.S. state or local electoral boards. DHS assesses that the types of systems Russian actors targeted or compromised were not involved in vote tallying. So, right here in this assessment from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence from January 6th, says that the Russian hackers, supposedly Russian hackers, had access to state and local electoral boards, but that they had access to them, not that they even actually got into them and were able to manipulate anything. But on top of that, they did not have access to the vote tallying process, to actually change the vote tally in any way. This was admitted in January, and that is a key takeaway that is very important in terms of the information that I'm going to be getting into here in a little bit. And just at the very end, I threw this last little bit in here. At the end of this assessment, it also said an interesting little piece. We assess Moscow will apply lessons learned from its Putin-ordered campaign aimed at the U.S. presidential election to future influence efforts worldwide, including against U.S. allies and their election processes. So here in this assessment, it's already saying that not only did the evil, bad Russians try to hack, into our campaign and elected bad, evil Donald Trump, but they're also going to try to, influence campaigns all around the world. And you actually, I even had them come out and say that with the recent campaign in France. Macron said that he was basically hacked by the Russians, and that they were trying to help take him down. Well, it seems like the all-powerful Russians weren't so all-powerful there. Now, were they? So that's just an interesting little bit there. But definitely the key takeaway is that this was admitted by our own government back in early January, that the Russians were not able to change any votes whatsoever, and that they had access to state and local electoral boards, but didn't actually manipulate anything. at least they didn't say that they did or didn't provide any evidence that they did. And now I want to get to this leaker, because this is definitely a very key story. So this is from the New York Post. Federal contractor busted for leaking top secret NSA docs on Russian hacking. A 25-year-old federal contractor was charged Monday with leaking a top secret NSA report detailing how Russian military hackers targeted U.S. voting systems just days before the election. The highly classified intelligence document, published Monday by The Intercept, describes how Russia managed to infiltrate America's voting infrastructure using a spear phishing email scheme that targeted local governments, officials, and employees. It was allegedly provided to The Intercept by the 25-year-old Reality Lay Winner. Yes, this lady's name is Reality Winner. And she actually, in reality, is a loser. Absolutely a loser. She is definitely does not have a very bright future ahead of her. I don't think there was anything bright about this lady, if you know what I mean. But anyways, 25-year-old Reality Winner, yes, that is actually her name, Reality Winner, of Augusta, who appeared in court Monday after being arrested at her home over the weekend. She was charged with removing and mailing classified materials to a news outlet, DOJ officials said. Quote, releasing classified material without authorization threatens our national security and undermines public faith in government, Deputy Attorney General Rod J. Rosenstein explained in a statement. Quote, people who are trusted with classified information and pledge to protect it must be held accountable when they violate that obligation. Winner, who works at, I mean, that's just the most ridiculous name ever. Good grief. Winner, who works as a contractor at Pluribus International Corporation, allegedly leaked the report in early May. A federal official told NBC News that she had, in fact, given it to The Intercept. Operatives from the Russian General Staff Main Intelligence Directorate, or GRU, are said to have targeted employees at a U.S. election software company last August and then again in October. While the name of the company is unclear, the report refers to an undisclosed product made by VR Systems, an electronic voting services and equipment vendor in Florida that has contracts in 8 states, including New York. The hackers were given a, quote, cyber espionage mandate specifically directed at U.S. and foreign elections, the report says. On August 24, 2016, the group sent the employees fake emails which were disguised as messages from Google. At least one of the workers was believed to have been compromised. The emails were said to have contained weaponized Microsoft Word attachments, which were set up to appear as unharmful documentation for the VR Systems EVID voter database, but were actually embedded with automated software commands that are secretly turned on as soon as the user opens the document. Very, very tricky, those Russians are. The hack ultimately gave the Russians a back door and the ability to deliver any sort of malware or malicious software they wanted, the report says. And that is a key thing to remember, malware or malicious software. In addition, the NSA document also describes 2 other incidents of Russian meddling prior to the election. In one, the hackers posed as a different voting company referred to as, quote, U.S. Company 2, from which they sent phony test emails offering, quote, election-related products and services. The other operation was said to be conducted by the same group of operatives and involved sending emails to addresses at the American Samoa Election Office in the attempt to uncover more existing accounts before striking again. It is ultimately unclear what came of the cyber attack, but the NSA report firmly states that the Russians had been intent on, quote, mimicking a legitimate absentee ballot-related service provider. Quote, it is unknown whether the aforementioned spear phishing deployment successfully compromised the intended victims and what potential data could have been accessed by the cyber actor, the NSA states, of the result of the hacking. So right there they say it is unknown whether they successfully compromised it and what data they could have even accessed, even if they were able to compromise it. So you're going to see a key theme here with everything that is in this leaked document. You're going to see attempts by supposed, again, alleged Russian hackers to influence systems outside of actual voter tallying systems. So voter registration, databases and things of that sort. So what you basically have here is a more detailed explanation of what some of the potential alleged Russian hacking attempts could have been, and a possible scope of what they could have actually been attempting to do. Whoever the hackers may have been, because again, it's just alleged that it's the Russian. There hasn't been any actual proof put forward that the Russians, the Russian government especially, directed any of these, hacking efforts. And the NSA, again, just as everybody else who's, actually looked at this stuff, says that we're not really sure about who exactly did what and what even happened. So there's still just a ton of speculation. All this really does is affirms the earlier assessment from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence from January earlier this year, that the Russians had attempted to get into certain electoral systems, but they had access to them, but were very likely unsuccessful in any actual attempts to do anything. Again, they don't put any evidence forward that they actually did anything. And they didn't actually do anything really. There's just no evidence for it. So maybe they did, maybe it was the Russians, maybe it was some fat, Cheeto stained, 14, 15-year-old kid. Who knows? The key takeaway, though, is this last little bit here. VR Systems doesn't sell voting machines, but holds contracts in New York, California, Florida, Illinois, Indiana, North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia, making it a prime target for those who want to disrupt the vote and cause chaos come election day. So, again, this information that they're providing is really nothing new. We know that there were, attempts by certain hackers to try to access, certain electoral systems. But again, our own government has admitted already that there were no actual attempts made, no successful attempts at least made whatsoever, to actually access or manipulate, for that matter, the actual vote tallying systems, which would have actually, changed votes. The implication, of course, is that, through trying to manipulate polling data and different voter database information, and obviously through, generating fake news and using armies of trolls and all this other stuff, that they were able to actually influence the election that way. Which of course makes it completely disingenuous when you have people come out and say that Russia hacked the election. I mean, you have that allegation thrown out there time and time again by the media and the Democrats that Russia actually hacked the election. No, they didn't. They didn't actually hack the election. More and more, I mean, the speculation just continues to rise, but it doesn't, we don't have any solid proof that the Russians, or anyone that can even be named for that matter, actually did anything. So that's basically where we're at with that. The lady who leaked this stuff, she apparently leaked it to The Intercept, right? And apparently right after she leaked it to The Intercept, apparently she basically got busted. And a lot of people are saying that The Intercept basically somehow screwed her over. And it seems like that may be the case. The Intercept, when they got these highly classified documents from Reality Winner, if that is her real name, it's just a ridiculous name. I mean, my God. But anyways, they got this information from her, The Intercept did, and they contacted the NSA, basically trying to confirm it, pretty much. The NSA then contacted the FBI, and what a lot of people are thinking is that they were able to gather clues based off the information that the Intercept gave them, and were actually able to basically find out who did it and bust her for it. So it's kind of unclear whether or not they directly made that happen, or if it was something that, you know, could have really been avoided. I'm not 100% sure there. So it is definitely one hell of a coincidence, though, because I mean, the day after she, you know, basically leaks that to them, or like a couple days after, she gets busted, and then of course there are ways to trace, you know, where that information came from. So definitely the Intercept contacting the NSA didn't help her case. So it's very possible that the Intercept actually screwed her over on that one. But it's very interesting who this lady is. Obviously, she doesn't just have a interesting name. She actually has a bit of an interesting background too. And this is something that highlights a bigger trend in the Trump administration right now. So this is from the Daily Caller. NSA leaker is a Bernie supporter who, quote, resists Trump. The 25-year-old woman who stole, quote, top secret documents from the National Security Agency and leaked them to The Intercept appears to be a supporter of Bernie Sanders and other progressive icons such as Bill Maher and Michael Moore. Reality Lay Winner's apparent social media footprint also shows that she is a supporter of other liberal causes, including the Women's March and the Islamic Society of North America, the Muslim Civil Rights Group. In other words, she is a social justice warrior supreme. She also recently referred to President Trump as a piece of bleep because of his position on the Dakota Access DAPL protests. On February 14th, a day after Winner took her top secret job at Pluribus, Winner posted a photo outside of the Atlanta offices of Georgia Senator David Perdue. Winner wrote that she had a 30-minute private meeting with the Republican lawmaker's state policy director. She said they discussed, quote, my concerns regarding climate change and what the state of Georgia is doing to reduce dependency on fossil fuels. Again, just an ultimate social justice warrior. A spokeswoman for Perdue released a statement on Tuesday calling the allegations against Winner, quote, very serious. Yeah, you think? The allegations, quote, the allegations against Mrs. Winner are very serious and if true, directly threaten our national security. We trust our Justice Department will get to the bottom of this and handle it appropriately, said the spokeswoman. Winner was heavily critical of Trump just after he took office. She used the hashtag, quote, never my president, and resist in a Facebook post about his position on DAPL. So here you go. You've got somebody who's obviously a radical, you know, liberal, a radical leftist. She despises President Trump. This is someone who is 25 years old. The only real background we have on her is that she graduated. She completed basic training for the Air Force. As far as I've seen, there's not a whole lot more that's really known about her. And the obvious question is, how in the hell did this lady have a high-level security clearance? I mean, it's just absurd. If you're going to have a high-level security clearance, not only should, obviously, you should be, you should have your background check, your criminal record checked, all of that should be checked. You should have, you know, uh, people that know you should, be asked about you. Of course, your social media, is something that should be looked at. Clearly, there was not a proper vetting process in allowing this lady to have access to this kind of information. Somebody who's saying the types of stuff that she's saying about the president should not, regardless of who the president is, if somebody was saying these kind of things about Obama and they were in that kind of a position, I would say that that's not good. It's not okay. It's not about who's the president at that point. Obviously, somebody who is clearly, disapproves very, vocally and openly, and is actually basically a political activist against the current administration that they're basically working for, is something that is completely unacceptable, obviously. And it makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder who else, how many other crazy, social justice warrior Bernie Sanders and Hillary supporters are there out there, and Obama supporters embedded in the government that have access to this kind of information? The answer is a lot, a whole hell of a lot. And it's a big problem. There needs to be an absolute purge of everyone 2 levels down that is still holdovers from the Obama administration. I mean, I believe it's something like 3,000, government positions that still need to be filled. Just absurd. I mean, Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, needs to get taken out. Someone else needs to get put in there. We need to start filling these positions because, I mean, it is just a serious problem. Not only do you have sort of a deadlock in the administration, you've got them actually, it's even worse than that, they're actually plugging away in many ways with the previous administration, the Obama administration's agenda, and they are openly against the president in many ways and actively trying to undermine him. It's a big problem. And of course, this lady is now being charged with, a felony under the Espionage Act, I believe. Very, very serious crime. I mean, I think she could potentially face life in prison, I'm pretty sure. So, very serious, crime that, of course she committed, she admitted to doing this. This is something that just needs to happen. These people that are leaking this information, it is a serious felony. It's a serious crime. And you can't have people openly trying to undermine the president of the United States that are embedded within the administration. That's called a deep state coup. It's not good, and it's not what our country is all about. And with all the allegations of Russian meddling and Russians here and Russians there and Russians everywhere, I think it's important to take a little bit of a step back. We live in, there's such a constant barrage of news nowadays that it's hard to really focus on certain things and really take things into perspective sometimes. And I think it's key for people to remember that there is still zero evidence of any collusion, zero collusion between, let alone Trump himself. He's not even under investigation probably, but anyone in the Trump campaign. There's no evidence, no actual evidence of any real collusion, no proof at least of any collusion whatsoever. And when it comes to the hacking, when it comes to the Russian hacking, there is no proof that Russia actually did any hacking, especially that Vladimir Putin actually, ordered the hacking attempts. On top of that, the whatever hacking did happen didn't actually affect any vote tallies, any vote counts whatsoever. As far as the Russian trolls and fake news, Stanford University, I believe, did a study that that tackled the fake news debacle, and what they found is that the fake news, that the Russian generated quote unquote fake news, was seen by very few people and affected even fewer votes, if any. So, so that's where that stands, and it's key that we don't know who did the hacking. We still don't know who did the hacking. And that brings me to this article from Zero Hedge from March 18th of this year. WikiLeaks unveils Vault 7, the largest ever publication of confidential CIA documents. Another Snowden emerges. A total of 8,761 documents have been published as part of Year Zero, the first in a series of leaks the whistleblower organization has dubbed Vault 7. WikiLeaks has said that Year Zero revealed details of the CIA's global covert hacking program, including weaponized exploits used against company products including Apple's iPhone, Google's Android, and Microsoft Windows, and even Samsung TVs, which are turned into covert microphones. And of course, it's in the, the contracts for the, Samsung smart TVs that basically they will be listening to you, so watch what you say. And, of course, everyone made fun of, President Trump and Kellyanne Conway and everyone else for, saying that, you could be spied on through, your microwave or whatever. I mean, the head of the CIA back in like 2013 or 2012 or something like that admitted that you can be spied on through any smart technology, like your dishwasher, your whatever. So, and then of course the WikiLeaks Vault 7 just proved just all of that. Totally bombshell. But there was another bombshell revelation in the Vault 7. Another profound revelation is that the CIA can engage in, here we go, quote, false flag cyber attacks which portray, you guessed it, Russia as the assailant. Discussing the CIA's remote devices branch Umbrage Group, WikiLeaks source notes that it, quote, collects and maintains a substantial library of attack techniques stolen from malware, here we go with that malware that I was talking about earlier, produced in other states, including the Russian Federation. Quote, with Umbrage and related projects, the CIA can not only increase its total number of attack types, but also misdirect attribution by leaving behind the fingerprints of the groups that the attack techniques were stolen from. Umbrage components cover key loggers, password collection, webcam capture, data destruction, persistence, privilege escalation, stealth, antivirus, PSP, avoidance, and survey techniques. So, and just, in case you question the credibility of WikiLeaks, no one has ever come out and said that anything WikiLeaks has put out has been false. If they have never been able to provide any sort of evidence or proof of that. Julian Assange, the main WikiLeaks dude, is basically a bipartisan rogue in terms of, politics. The liberals loved him during the Bush administration because he was leaking stuff about the different internment camps. I believe Abu Ghraib or something like that. I forget how it's exactly pronounced. But he was leaking basically how the CIA was, actually torturing people, and we were breaking the law in that regard. Of course, he also leaked stuff throughout the Obama administration, and now he's continuing to leak stuff. Throughout all of that, no one has ever been able to question the credibility of, or actually disprove rather, the credibility of anything that he's ever been able to put out. And this, of course, is no different. So there you have it. The, WikiLeaks putting out information that says that the CIA itself has the capability of using stolen malware and other, hacking techniques from different countries, including Russia, and actually using them to stage them as some sort of a false flag event. And you know, you might be asking why would that happen? Well, you've got an administration, a previous administration, that was about to see everything that, especially the Obama, you know, and his whole administration was about to see everything that they had done for the past 8 years torched into flame with Donald Trump entering into the presidency. So they had plenty of reason to try to go to extra lengths to try to undermine him. And that brings me to my next article from The Atlantic. Why is Obama expanding surveillance powers right before he leaves office? And this was from January 13th, 2017. On Thursday, the Obama administration finalized new rules that allow the National Security Agency to share information it gleans from its vast international surveillance apparatus with the 16 other agencies that make up the U.S. intelligence community. And this was right before Obama left office, keep in mind. With the new changes, which were long in the works, those agencies can apply for access to various feeds of raw, undoctored NSA intelligence. Analysts will then be able to sift through the contents of those feeds as they see fit, before implementing required privacy protections. Previously, the NSA applied those privacy protections itself before forwarding select pieces of information to agencies that might need to see them. The updated procedures will multiply the number of intelligence analysts who have access to NSA surveillance, which is captured in large quantities and often isn't subject to warrant requirements. So you had Obama basically signing this executive order that was going to allow for the wide dissemination of classified information throughout the 16 intelligence agencies. And then you'll remember you had people like, Evelyn Farkas. She was a sort of mid-level person in the intelligence community, and she came out and she was being interviewed on, I think, MSNBC with Mika Brzezinski or something like that, MSDNC basically, and she comes out and she says, oh, well, we had access to, all this information, and we wanted to make sure that we got it to the Hill, Capitol Hill, to people in Congress. And she says that because we were worried that if the incoming administration, the Trump administration, knew the sources and methods, those were the direct quotes, that were used, that they would try to basically get rid of all this information. So she tried to spread it around as much as she could and tried to get it to people on Capitol Hill. You just have right there an example of somebody who is basically a political activist who at least at some point was in the Obama administration and was actively a part of this effort to spread this classified information around and to get it to members of Capitol Hill, to get it to members of Congress. Specifically, I'm sure, Democrat members of Congress. That just goes to illustrate a piece of, this larger puzzle into the whole Russian collusion narrative and the interference into the election, and of course the even bigger story, the abuse of the intelligence agencies by the Obama administration and the criminal leaks that keep coming out and are so frequent because of what Obama, in part at least because of Obama allowing this wide dissemination of classified information even to mid-level people like Evelyn Farkas. And then that brings me to my next article. You remember when Obama was saying that it was absurd to say that there would be any sort of, that there could be any sort of election fraud? Oh yeah, you remember when Trump was campaigning and he noticed how Hillary Clinton basically stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. I hate Bernie Sanders, don't get me wrong, but she absolutely stole it from him. The DNC colluded against Bernie Sanders to give Hillary all of the superdelegates. It was totally criminal. Deborah Wasserman Schultz, the head of the DNC at the time, had to actually step down. And then they inserted, of course, Donna Brazile, who famously was feeding town hall questions to Hillary Clinton when she worked for CNN. So you gotta just love the incestuous relationship and eternal corruption of the Democrats. It never seems to cease. And of course Obama said, and you know, because Trump was like, well, hey, you know, you stole it from Bernie, so I'm worried. You know, I'm not going to necessarily accept the election results. You know, I'm going to wait and see what happens. And then of course Obama came out and said it's ridiculous. You know, elections are handled by state and local, you know, officials. It's not the feds that actually handle elections. He literally said that. And then he actually tries to federalize the elections. So this is from FCW.com. DHS chief doubles down on critical infrastructure designation for voting systems. In the wake of a leaked intelligence document describing Russian attempts to hack voting systems, Department of Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly doubled down on maintaining the designation of voting systems as critical infrastructure. And this is the current Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Kelly told the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, that's a mouthful, on June 6th, that despite pushback he's received from state and local election officials, as well as, quote, many members of Congress, he would support the designation put in place by his predecessor, Jay Johnson. And of course, that what that did is that basically labeled the election systems as critical infrastructure, meaning that they're basically federalized at this point. And you had, as Secretary Kelly was saying, a lot of pushback from state and local officials and different people, members of Congress, because of some reasons that I'll get into here in a little bit. Quote, I don't believe we should back off the critical infrastructure designation, he testified, adding that he plans to meet with state officials next week to further discuss how DHS can make sure states' election systems are protected. Quote, we're here to help. Anytime the government says that, you just run the other way. I mean, Ronald Reagan said the most dangerous words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And let me tell you what, he's right. Quote, there is nothing more fundamental than our democracy, to our democracy than voting, says Secretary Kelly. And of course, it's just completely ironic because right after Obama says that it's, the states that, control, state and local officials that control elections. It's not the feds that control elections. And, it's crazy to say, to not accept the results of an election. And then, he basically comes out and says, there was Russian hacking, this election isn't, the election result isn't official. I'm going to designate the, election systems as critical infrastructure under the feds, which I just said don't control elections. So, I mean, just total absurd 1984 level, Orwellian craziness from Obama as usual. And there you have it. You got the current Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security saying that he wants to continue with the critical infrastructure. That is quite unfortunate. And then, of course, it says here at the end, Johnson and Kelly have both stressed that such federal assistance is, quote, voluntary. So they say that it is voluntary. That you just, it's okay. We're just going to be hanging out here, the feds, just chilling. We'll be watching everything. And, if you want us to come check things out for you, we'll be there for you. We got your back, right? That's how it is? Not exactly. That brings me to my last article for the day. From Daily Caller. And this was on February 21st of this year. Exclusive. Obama's feds tried to hack Indiana's election system while Pence was governor. Department of Homeland Security, DHS officials tried to hack Indiana's state electoral system with at least 14,800, quote, scans or hits between November 1st, 2016 and December 16th, 2016, the Daily Caller News Foundation investigative group has learned. The attacks are the second confirmed IT scanning assault by DHS officials against the states that resisted then-President Barack Obama's attempt to increase federal involvement in state and local election systems by designating them as critical infrastructure for national security. Yes, you heard that right. It was states that resisted the attempt to have the feds actually help them because of the election systems being listed as critical infrastructure. The state's IT team traced the intruder to a DHS computer's IP address. The same DHS unit attempted 10 times in 2016 to hack into the Georgia electoral system. Federal officials are barred under DHS rules from trying to penetrate a state system without the express approval of the state. Yeah, you think? Neither Georgia nor Indiana approved the DHS scanning attempts. Thomas Vesley, IT director for the Indiana Secretary of State, told the DCNF that we, quote, kindly declined the DHS assistance because we were very comfortable in the work we were doing in monitoring our election system. Georgia Secretary of State Brian Kemp told the DNCF January 24, 2016, he was suspicious because 4 of the 10 attacks against the Georgia election network occurred as he was about to talk to DHS officials or coincided with his public testimony opposing the critical infrastructure designation. Quote, it's certainly concerning about the dates, Kemp said. Indiana Secretary of State Connie Lawson said despite the scale of the scans, the DHS efforts to attack its election system were unsuccessful. Quote, our voter registration system was not penetrated. She said there was, quote, one slight penetration on an election website that was actually old and out of date, so it didn't go anywhere. So there you go. You know, they'll talk all day long about Russians, you know, hacking this and Russians hacking that. Well, right after Obama designated the elections as critical infrastructure, then states that, you know, refused that designation and didn't want the help of the DHS were actually targeted and hacked by the DHS, basically during the election and before the election, without the state's approval at all. You know, complete hypocrisy, obviously, because you know, they're the ones complaining about you know, Russian hacking, and then there they are actually doing illegitimate hacking themselves. So the bottom line here is that no one knows what really happened when it comes down to the interference into the election. We know that there is no actual proof of any Russian involvement. We know that the Russians were not able to even have access to the vote tallying systems to actually be able to change votes. We know that the supposed quote-unquote fake Russian news put out by Russia did absolutely nothing to change the election results. And Hillary Clinton is just a bitter lunatic of an old woman at this point, running around making every excuse and conspiracy theory in the book for why, you know, she didn't win the election. And she can't accept the fact that she ran a horrible campaign and she was a politically toxic candidate that was hated across the board by basically everybody. And she lost to Donald Trump, a reality TV star, and that is something that is just going to haunt her for the rest of her wicked days. We know that the former head of the CIA, John Brennan, was very vocal about not being too fond of Trump. He even went so far as to say that President Trump should basically watch his mouth about the intelligence communities, about what he says about them. Literally tells the incoming president to watch his mouth. The former head of the Department of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, at one point called Trump's travel ban un-American and unconstitutional. He's been quite vocal about his disapproval of Trump, which is you're not supposed to be political when you're in these types of government positions. We've of course got this expanding, issue of the Obama administration leaking, people within the Obama administration leaking classified information and the unmasking, very, very possibly, without good reason, of American citizens like Michael Flynn and leaked to the media. So basically, on top of that, you've got the Vault 7, leaks that have shown that the CIA can use Russian malware and Russian hacking techniques to actually stage a false flag type of event, to stage somebody else for whatever reason. You've got an administration, a previous administration, that had the motive and the means to do something like this, to do whatever it possibly could to undermine the current administration, because, again, this is a president who, for them, was completely unpredictable. He got almost no money from any of the big donors. He didn't get supported by even the Republican Party. The entire establishment knew that he was going to be a big problem for them. So you've basically got this whole embedded establishment against him. And the bottom line is we don't know what really happened, but as the mainstream media and the Democrats continue to push for this Russian narrative, more and more information continues to come out on the other side, and it's looking more and more and more like there was a serious attempt by the previous administration to abuse its position of authority and power, and to abuse its intelligence communities to basically spy on its opposition and attempt to basically subvert and undermine the current administration. It's a big problem. It's basically a soft coup, a deep state coup, to try to overthrow the current president of the United States. It is something that everybody across the political spectrum should completely 100% be against, and I hope that everybody is, and I hope that everybody is paying very close attention to what's going on, because we live in some very, very crazy times, that's for sure. With that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, leave me a comment. If you would like to hear the audio version of this, I will try to put that up on SoundCloud. Also, you can follow me on Twitter or like me on Facebook, and I will have the links for all of that in the description. I hope you have a wonderful day, and may the Force be with you.